Hi everyone, it's Ellen again, and this week I've got a project for you which is inspired by Franz Marc, and it's all about animals and how they've been abstracted by their environment and by the atmosphere that's going on. For this project I'm using watercolour paints, and in my palette I've already got out the paints that I want. Unfortunately in my set I only have lemon yellow, so I've got lemon yellow here. To make it into more of a cadmium yellow, a bit more of an orangey yellow, I've got my cadmium red next to it, so I can just mix a tiny bit of yellow separately over here and make it more orangey, a bit warmer as we go along. This is crimson, this is cerulean blue, this is ultramarine blue, this is leaf green, and this is phthalo blue. So you've got your leafy and your more bottle green there. I find it useful just to get them all out to start with, because we're going to be knocking things back because we're painting, and also to help with opposite colours and harmonious colours and things like that as well. So it's best just to get them all out to start with. With watercolour, if you don't use them all, you can let them go hard in your palette, and then you can add water to them and you can just bring them back to life again later. So just because they're on the palette, it doesn't mean that you can't use them anymore. Okay, pop that there. This is my source picture that I'm going from. As you can see, I've done a rough drawing of my tiger, and what I've done is I've used the grasses that are going across the face like this as a way of abstracting my tiger. Now, Franz Marc, this is the sort of inspiration I'm going from. He was inspired by the Cubists, and he used very simplified shapes. As you can see, you've got all these triangles coming up towards here, you know, to try and lead you into the picture, and then we identify a face, so it makes us move around like that. So using those colours and those very angled shapes to abstract the animal, but then you can still recognise it as well. There's also quite a bright colour palette going on there, almost every colour of the rainbow, which you can do if you want to, or you can create more of a limited palette if that suits you better. So what I've done is I've drawn my tiger out, and I've kept the very simple shapes that I've used to draw the tiger. So for instance, there's quite a good sort of triangular shape, so I've kept that there. And also triangular shapes around the eyes, so I've kept those there. Reinforce the triangular shape along the jaw as well, to keep the face kind of dynamic really. And then I've got the body coming down here, just very roughly put that in, and then put the grasses kind of in front in order to help abstract and divide up the tiger that I've got. So I'm going to be flipping back between the two images. I'm kind of using this for my information, for my accuracy, and then I'm using this kind of for colour, if you like. So that's what I'll be doing. Now, with the watercolour, the most important thing is to paint from light to dark. So this is why I haven't put any paint on the paper. I may not get to finish. I'll show you it later on in the week when it's finished. But I want to emphasise that we keep the light areas, we do sort of the light areas first, keeping things clean, and then we go on to the darker colours. I didn't want to start putting in dark backgrounds and kind of painting backwards to forwards, because that would confuse everybody. Okay, so I've got a couple of rounded brushes. These are probably my favourite brushes to paint with, really. Just different sizes, so I can use my bigger brush for bolder shapes and stripes. I may or may not use that. I will use my finer brush and my middle brush, just in case this is a bit on the big side. So those are what I'm using. I've also got tissue to squeeze the brush out with water, so we can control how much water there is, and a water pot as well. Okay, so let's get going. I'm going to start with the tiger's face. So I've got my palette here. I'm going to be sending out the colour cards, so you know the opposite colours that we need in order to knock things back. So I'm making a tiny bit of purple. The reason why I'm making purple is because it's the opposite colour to yellow, which is what I'm going to be starting with. Now, because I'm using my crimson and the ultramarine, I've got quite a good smooth purple to start with. It's not bright, we don't need it too bright. So these are like my troughs of colour, and then here, this is where I do the mixing. So I'm going to take my yellow, put it there. Not sure how much I need, so I'm going to put quite a bit in. Bring my brush off, and then a tiny bit of purple just to take the brightness out of the yellow. And as you can see, it doesn't take much at all. So I've got kind of an off yellow there, but I've still got the colour, the brightness. I've still got the colour that I want, but a bit less brightness. Okay, so also on my pad, you'll see that I've drawn my picture here. With watercolour, it's kind of easier to have a small picture. Watercolour doesn't quite go as far as acrylic, but I've also got plain parts here, so I can try my colour out before I put it on the painting. So I'm getting my middle-sized brush, and I'm going to add some water to this yellow that I've made. Now remember, if we want to make things paler, we don't use white, we use water, and that water makes the paint go more and more transparent, and it's the paper that shines through when we use that paint. Right, get some dirty marks off my pad, and I'm going to see what that looks like. So it's quite dark, it's quite bright, so I'm going to add a bit more water in, and maybe a touch more purple. So yeah, it's all about how much you dilute the paint. So a tiny bit more purple, so it's a little bit in your face. Don't want it quite so in your face, just mixing that in like that. Okay, so yeah, middle sized brush, good. So let's have a look at this. Don't know if you can see that, but it's a slightly less bright and slightly less as much yellow in there. So I'm going to start putting some yellow onto the face. Just a little bit more water, I think. Can't really have too much water. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to keep some of my white areas clean. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start around the nose here. Just a thin layer of yellow. Now watercolour painting is all about layering. So you do have to allow time for things to dry. If you drop another colour in, it will then spread into the yellow. Now sometimes you want that wet on wet, dropping things in, but right now I don't. If you notice, I'm not painting this piece of grass, I'm going to do that separately. So I'm leaving it clean. You can use masking fluid, I haven't got any, so I'm just trying to be careful. So I'm going to put a little bit of yellow in there. A little bit of yellow in there, like that. So I'm keeping the triangles around the eyes white, and I want to keep some of this white. Now I put a little bit of yellow where I didn't want it. So what you can do is you can make your brush thirsty. Now if you squeeze your brush out completely and put it in the wet paint, it then sucks it up, absorbs it all, like that. So I'm going to put a little bit of yellow where the body's coming down. I want to make this orange later, so I'm going to drop that in like that. Those large shapes. Because there's lots of water, it's spreading quite nicely, and I want to stop that hard edge, so I'm going to put a little bit of water on the edges blend that in. Don't want a crisp edge, I want a nice blended edge. There we go. Blend that away a little bit more. Oh, I've got a triangle of yellow here, I didn't remember. And then I'm going to wash some yellow down in this space. Now that's gone on quite thick, so again I've squeezed my brush out and I can just spread it a little bit further, like that. Try not to put too much paint on the paper in one go. Okay, put a little bit of yellow around the ears, I think, like that. Okay, so I'm kind of treat this picture as a picture of two halves really. I want this to dry, so I'm going to work over here while this is drying. If two areas of paint touch, so for instance if I go straight in and I do green going across and this is wet and the green here is wet, what will happen is they will merge together. So I do want them to dry a little bit in between applications. Okay, so I take a little bit of my leaf green, like that, wash my brush out, and the cadmium yellow is the opposite to the leaf green. They're both made of yellow, so there's no extra blue in there that's going to really make it mucky. I want to be in control of how mucky my green is. I don't want any extra colours in there to make it more mucky. I actually take quite a lot of that green. My green's a bit thin, so I think I need a bit more paint. I should get some more in a minute. A little bit more cadmium red, just a touch, just to knock it back a small amount, like that. Put some water in there, and then I'm going to try it out. What's it like? Yes, it's quite thin. I'm going to put some more paint in there. Like I say, it's a bit on the thin side. Seems to be a lot of mixer, not much colour, so I have a bit more of that. I'm not very good at keeping things tidy, I'm afraid. All kind of blends in together after a while. Anyways, a bit more green into that red, like that. So yes, that's a nice balance of the red and the green. Knocked back a little bit, but we've still got a good amount of green in there. Bit of water. Let's see what that looks like. Yeah, that's not too bad, and I've got a good quantity of paint. That's good. We've always got to have good quantity of paint. Right, so I'm taking my paint and I'm going to put some of my leaf green into the lightest leaves at the front. We want them to come forward, so we want them to be nice and light. Don't want them to be too heavy. I'm just going to drop that in across there. So this is all layer one. Watercolour is all about layering. So we should be making colours more intense and brighter as we go along. This is dry, so I can put my green going through here. That's fine. You see there's no bleed there, just the colour goes straight down like that, which is good. And it's all so pale that you're not really going to hurt anything. So green going across here. You can see they're all kind of the same colour. I'm going to put a bit of white with that one, make it paler. If I want it darker, I can build it up later. Right. Because it's so warm, this is all drying nice and quickly, which is good. Bit of a nightmare if you're doing washes, but short flicks of colour, that's quite nice. You quite like that. My steady hand putting my arm on the table, which is why it's creaking so much, and you get a nice steady line through the face like that. And I'm going to take away any extra sort of bubbles and things I don't really want. Spread the paint out. Okay, so you get the idea. Start getting the grasses going across the face like that. That was a bit on the wide side, but that doesn't matter. If I've gone over the edge when I'm happy with something, I can get a little bit of water and I can just scrub a tiny amount and it just picks it up again like that. As long as the paint is wet, you can pick it up and put it down, which is quite nice. There we go. Right then, so I'm looking at my tiger. Ooh, green on my finger. It's no good. Scrubbing motions. That's all right. It's going to get covered up with an orange or something anyway, so it's not too much of a problem. Again, just scrub, 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 and you can pick it up. There we go. Right then, so now what I'm going to do is in the face, I'm going to make a bit more contrast. I'm going to start putting a bit of a layer of orange on top of the yellow. Okay, so I've got my cadmium red here, which is my red made with yellow. Don't want too much because it overpowers the yellow. You usually want about 3/4 yellow to 1/4 red. Otherwise it just looks like more red. Mix them together. Get a nice orangey colour. Don't want to go too bright too quickly. And the cerulean is blue, which is the lighter of the two. It's really good for knocking back orange. Much better suited than ultramarine. Too much there, but that's all right. Let's just put more red and more yellow in. It's a nice thing with colour mixing. It's like a seesaw. If you go too far, you go the other way and balance it up again. So you see, still a bit too much blue in there. Put a little bit of water. It feels a bit dry. So I'm going to put some more yellow in. A bit more yellow. And a bit more of my cadmium red. Come on, red. There we go. Mix it in, and as you can see, it goes back to orange. It's looking a little bit dark. We have knocked it back. I'm happy with how much it's knocked back, but it's looking a little bit dark, so I'm going to add some water to it. Okay, stir that in. Let's have a look, see what it's like. Looking a bit yellow. Let's put a little bit more red in. Very much try it and see. That's better. Okay, so I'm going to take my orange and I'm going to put a little bit of layer 2 on top of my yellow. Okay, so I'm working on the face here. So I'm just looking. So I want like a dark area, the edge of the nose, like this. I'm just dropping it in, and I can soften that edge like that. It'll blend much nicer into the yellow. I'm going to put a little bit kind of underneath the eye here. I'm just starting to warm the tiger up just a little bit. And you can go in as bright or as pale as you like. If you want to go vibrant, that's fine. It may not be your cup of tea. If you want to go vibrant, you just put another layer of the orange on after this one's dried. A little bit dark there, so I'm just picking some up. And I'm going to bring bring the orange round over here. Trying to avoid the eyes. You see where it's getting dark patches? If you don't want dark patches there, again, just pick them up like that. And I'm going to put a little bit of a shaping in this eye here. And leaves there. I think actually I'm going to put a little bit of shadow on this side of the nose. See, I'm leaving a gap in between the two areas so they don't bleed in together. So this part of the nose is lighter than that part. And I'm going to put some more orange, go a little bit darker on this side here. And then I'm going to blend that in like that. Don't want lots of ugly lines. Like that. Take that up there. So you can see you're starting to get a bit of depth and a bit of 3-dimension in the face. I want to keep some of this clean. So pick that up there. So what I'm doing is when I'm pick the paint up and put it on, when I want to pick it up, I squeeze it out or I push my brush into the tissue, making the brush dry again, and it then absorbs it back up again. Okay, so I'm going to put some orange in here. Orange in here for the leg. Soften that side there, just a little bit of water. And that orange is going to come down here. I'm trying to avoid the grasses, and they should be dry. Just pick that up on the side. There we go. The grass is dry, so the orange is not bleeding into green, which is great. Like that. So you can see that the tiger is starting to take shape and you're starting to understand the body and the legs. Go. Again, I want to soften that, so I'm cleaning my brush and then I'm squeezing it into the tissue to take some liquid out, a tiny little bit more liquid, just a little bit of liquid, just to soften. Dry my brush again and just soften it out like that. And a bit more orange. Body. So that's my 2 layers of orange on the body, making that colour stronger. And like I say, the more vibrant you want to be, the more layers of colour you put onto your tiger. Just a little bit of orange just to describe the ears, otherwise I'll wonder what they are or where they are. Should not be good. Just dropping them in like that, and I may put, yeah, I think I will put a bit of orange in there like that. Okay, so now I need to let that dry, so I need to work on something that's not in that area, or you walk away and come back later, you know, once this is dried. So I'm going to have a look at the leaves, and some of these leaves I want to have a slightly yellowy tint, so I'm going to take my watered down yellow that I've got here that I've already made up, and there's some bits of the leaves that are quite bright looking, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a thin layer of yellow over those bits of leaves, and what will happen is it's almost like colour mixing in front of your eyes. You'll put your green on top of your yellow, and that part of that green will be more like an olive green or a limey green, because you've got a layer of yellow and a layer of green, and they will just blend together, one layer on top of the other, because the paint is translucent. So I'm almost warming those bits of leaves up. I'm going to put some more layers of green on there, so liven my paint up again, and then I can start painting smaller areas in my leaves to give some variation. If you look now, I put that green over that yellow, and that becomes warmer like that. You don't have to have green on all of your yellow patches. Some of your yellow patches you could leave. It's just a leaf that's a bit lighter than the other. Now here I've got to decide which leaf is going to come first, which one's in front, and I'm going to make this one going across in front, and then when I paint this one I'm going to put a little bit of shadow on it. Now at the moment I've kept with sort of fairly traditional colours, and I'm going to put more bright colours into the background. Haven't quite decided what they are yet, but this is the main focus of this part of the picture. So yeah, just put a bit more green on there, on the leaves. Trying to give them a bit of a variation. I'm going to have this one coming in front, so I'm going to put more shadow behind. In between. So these ones that go across come forward, and the one that's going up goes behind. It's quite subtle at the moment, but I can put more shadow in it and build that up. And I'm going to do the same with this piece. So I'm putting darker green in the blade behind, so the two going across are lighter. And then because I want these two to come in front of this one, I can then put shade and make this one go back into the background, or further back than the grass is coming in front. Okay. And I can just peter out. To put more shadow into your leaves, we can add a little bit of ultramarine blue into your green. That looks very bright, but it will calm down once you put more of the knocked back green into it. Let's have a look, see what that's like. Okay, a little dark, so I'll put a little bit of water in there. So not using any white at all. See what it's like. It's more subtle. So yeah, we want a subtle layer on top of subtle layer really. So now I'm going to drop this dark green into the wet green that I've already laid down, and that will create more of a shadow on those leaves, like that, and it will push the pale leaf in front. So same here. And same here. And then you can put yellows and you can put light greens and things onto these leaves, and they will be brighter and they will come forward. Not too many layers though, otherwise it will be just as bright, just as dark as the ones going behind, which we don't really want. Like that. So you're starting to get some differentiation between the leaves and which one's coming forward and which one's coming back. So I want to put a little bit of background behind my tiger, and I want to start putting some abstract colours in. Now blue and orange are opposite colours. Obviously, like I say, I'm going to send out the colour information, so I'm going to get this dark blue. So when you're making these, you can think about what colour you're going to put where and why, and what colour you're going to knock things back with. So I'm making this blue. This blue is incredibly bright, so I'm going to knock it back with a little bit of orange, not too much, or we'll end up with mud. Maybe a little bit more. There we go. Let's have a look, see what that's like. Yeah, it's not too bright. And if you wanted to make it darker, you can put a little bit of crimson red in, and it'll go towards a kind of a purpley blue colour. Ooh, I like that. So now I can start thinking about my background and what am I going to put there. So this is all dry here, so I can start putting in some of my dark blue background colour.